Okay, hello and welcome to Track by Track Reviews. Today with me for the first time, long overdue, Ford Panther. I'll give you some links to some of his music stuff and his film stuff and all that stuff at the end. But today we're here to talk about the new album by artist Bonobo, the UK artist, his new album Black Sands.
Yeah.
It's described as electronic, but really listening to this album, I'd say there's just as many organic sounds.
Yeah, it's very instrumental.
Yeah.
You can get all kinds of genres in there. You get classical, a little bit of jazz, a little bit of R&B, a little bit of trip hop, a little bit of hip hop.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the coolest things about the album is him combining all those things into one without it sounding chaotic. It flows well.
It's one cohesive album altogether. It doesn't seem to dip from one genre over here to another one over here. It's a nice mix of everything.
So let's just go to the first song, Prelude. And sometimes for me, a prelude is sort of forgettable, and it's kind of like, it's just a prelude. Like, I'm not going to go back and listen to it. But this song is really pretty.
Yeah.
The violin sounds really good in this song.
It'll definitely get stuck in your head.
Yeah. You were
singing it the other day.
Like whistling it the other day. And I was like, what is that?
Yeah.
It's like a prelude.
It's very catchy. One of the most. I mean, it's instead of a prelude, it's almost like a song by itself.
And that song quickly transitions into Kiera, something like that. And this is more, it has like a hip-hop beat almost. And I was telling you when we were listening to this that I almost expect like a rapper to come out of here. Like, this is like, I wish hip-hop production sounded like this. But then also the violin part from Prelude comes back and fits in really well, which is a great example of that combination of sounds. So I like that song a lot.
Another nice little touch I like in that is the voice sample that you can hear.
Oh, yeah. And I'm not sure if that's the lady who has sang on many tracks, Andrea Triana. But yeah, it's just a vocal sample, I think, and it sounds really good. The next song, Kong, I think is one of the coolest songs on the album. Maybe a little long, because it is a pretty repetitive song, and that kind of goes with listening to this genre. There's a lot of repetition. But I think this song is good enough to where it's not like annoying. Like,
it's got a great bass line.
Yeah.
It really drives it.
Yeah, the bass and guitar are almost like harmonized in this song. I think it sounds really good. The next song on the album, Eyes Down, features who I was talking about before, Andrea Triana, who's a fellow label mate. They're on the same label. I think it's Ninja Tune or something like that. And this song would still be a good song without her vocals, but I'm glad he added the vocals because she not only has a good voice, but it adds another element, and this is, I think, where the sort of the hip-hop sound comes in with the way that she sings. It seems very hip-hop to me.
I also think what I think of when I hear about it is very R&B.
Yeah.
Very soulful. But it's got elements of trip-hop that almost remind me of Portishead and Massive Attack in ways.
The next song, El Toro, obviously it's Spanish, but it does... The beginning of it sounds to me like a sort of a Latin rhythm. It's got like the claves in the background and all that. And I think this is another song that utilizes a lot of different instruments. It's got the violin, the horns, and it sounds really good together. The violin's, once again, really, really good in this song.
It's very layered as far as the instrumentation goes. I think it's like from the start of the album to this point, this is the most dense song so far. As far as instrumentation goes. And
another thing that I have to mention is that as this song goes on, the drums get crazy. There's actually a couple parts where it's just the drums for maybe 5 seconds, but it sounds so good. The next song, We Could Forever, starts off with what you call the Caribbean influence, right?
Yeah, I definitely think it. I don't know if it is steel drum, but it definitely reminds me of steel drum. Easily my favorite song on the album. It's got a very upbeat tempo.
Yeah.
Really makes me want to groove whenever I hear it.
And it starts off with that influence, but then he adds his own part to it, which is that drum and bass, which is once again really good in this song.
Fantastic.
And later in the song, you get even more instruments.
You get jazz flute, which adds a little bit of
flute.
Adds a little bit of a Latin feel to it.
Yeah,
which just kind of all together makes me think of like a party in Miami or something like that.
Yeah, the flute really about halfway through just kind of takes over, and I'm totally okay with that.
Yeah.
The next song, 1009, seems a little out of place to me. What do you think of this song?
I think it's a dip. It's very it's got a lot of strange elements to it. A lot of kind of bells. It's kind of hard to place. It's not as melody driven, I would say.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more of just a beat and kind of ambient figures.
Exactly. Like, for me, it was the last couple songs have really dove into lots of different instruments being utilized. And here, this is probably like the most electronic song on the album, I think. And it just kind of throws aside all those other instruments, which isn't necessarily bad, but it does seem a little out of place to me.
I think it makes for a nice breakdown. I think it adds a little shape to the album, as opposed to it just being like dense songs of all the same thing.
Yeah.
It adds a little bit of a stretch in there, which I think adds to the flow of the album.
Yeah.
I personally think it's not my favorite, but
Yeah.
I still like it.
That's about where I stand. All right, the next song on the album, All In Forms, starts off really, really sounding hip-hop to me. And then there's this vocal sample thrown in there that's actually not at the forefront. It's in the production. It's sort of like underneath everything to sort of show that it's not like a vocal-driven track or anything. It sort of just uses instrumentation.
Sort of a megaphone effect, which I think kind of diminishes. I mean, it's definitely not up there with the rest of the instruments, but it still sounds good. I think still makes a big impact. One of the things you remember from the track, I think.
Yeah, actually, I think it's the biggest thing still being underneath everything that reminds me of the track, and it's a really catchy little vocal sample in there.
Less is more, in a way, almost.
The next song on the album is a single, The Keeper, once again featuring vocals from Andrea Triana. And I'd say of all the songs, this has probably the most traditional song structure. It's like verse, chorus, verse. And there's actually like a cool little vibraphone thing in between the verses that I like a lot.
It's not one of my favorite songs, and I was actually kind of surprised when I heard that it was the single. It's not exactly the song that I would have chosen for a single, but I do think it is a fantastic song.
The next song, Stay the Same, also features Andrea Triana on vocals. And of all the songs that she's featured on, I think this is probably my favorite.
I agree, definitely.
Okay, I'm not sure what it is. It feels like The Keeper was sort of not as serious as this song, not as pretty. And there's some really, really good saxophone all throughout the song.
At the very end, the sax really takes over after the vocals, and I think that's one of my favorite parts of the entire song.
Yeah.
Along with her vocals, of course.
The next song on the album, Animals, bringing in a lot of that jazz influence. Tons of instruments on the song. Great ride rhythm on the drums throughout the song. And there's just woodwinds that add a lot. There's later, once again, saxophone adding a lot.
Yeah.
There's just everything in the song.
This is another one of my favorite songs in the album. I can't exactly place what it reminds me of, but it gives me a very nostalgic feel. The jazziness, almost, I feel like could fit into a movie.
Yeah. This I think could have been a closer, but it's the next song is just definitely the title track, Black Sands. I think it might be my favorite song on the album.
I definitely think this is has the most variety of instruments on the whole album. I think it actually pretty much leaves the beat driven feeling of most of the songs behind. It's not really got electronic beats a lot. It's very organic, and I think that's what makes it so great. Not to say that the rest of the album. Yeah,
well, exactly, but it does stand out a little bit, and not in a like stand out like a sore thumb sort of way, because it fits with the album and everything. Just not the electronic noises. Just this song's just so good.
It's a great way to end the album. It's just one of those ones that's almost like a leviathan of awesomeness.
Yeah. Okay, so this album as a whole, what do you think?
I think this is one of the best albums I've heard all year. Personally, I'm going to give it a 9, just because I think it's got that raw power and that just, it's so mature. I think it's just, it deserves that for me.
Yeah, for me, not having heard any of his other stuff, I can't say that like, oh, what happened? It used to be like all electronic and stuff, so I really can't be disappointed if there's been any change to now, and this being his 4th album. And this album, at first, I was totally set on giving it a 7, because I was like, that's just what fits. I don't love it, I don't hate it, but it's above average. But this album just kept growing on me, and I couldn't explain why, other than it's just really good, that I kept going back to it and being satisfied with it. So I ended up giving this one an 8. I really like this album more than I thought I would. This was a pleasant surprise this year. Once again, Ford Fanter, and to talk about Bonobo's album Black Sands, and talking about that, the music you do in a lot of ways is similar to Bonobo, I think.
It's a little similar. I sort of add a little bit more of ambient figures into mine, but I do try and mix in electronic beats and kind of electro-pop feeling with very organic materials.
And so I'll leave a link to your MySpace. Of course, I'm suggesting it as a friend, but also because I legitimately do like your music. So check out his album.
Got a new album, Wolf Hollow. Check it out.
So until next time, this has been Track by Track Reviews. See you next week.